Coogs house. As we shift gears here and get ready for football season, Houston embarks on what might be the most important weekend to date.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate making your first listen each and every day. If you enjoyed the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below as we're heading into Easter weekend. For those celebrating, happy Easter, happy Good Friday. What's your favorite side dish at these big celebratory kind of holiday events? Rest her soul, I think of my grandma and her twice-baked stuffed potatoes. Tell us what you're thinking here. Today's show is brought to you. We're talking to a little bit later about Amazon Fire TV and some stuff we got going over there. But this is a big weekend for football. I want to talk about some people that Houston is looking at and actively talking to about coming in and being a part of what they got going on. And ultimately, they got the spring game on Saturday. We'll talk about what to look for on the offense, what to look for on the defense in separate segments as well. But this weekend is a big weekend for Houston in a recruiting sense, in terms of recruiting different transfer portal guys. And they got a couple of big name targets to keep an eye on, one of which is Jesus Machado. Now, I mentioned on Twitter that tweeting out that the Houston Cougars need Jesus, especially going into Easter weekend, would probably be a really good SEO headline. But in a more serious note, Jesus Machado is Jesus Macho. I can't read my own handwriting. Don't use sticky notes, kids. Please type things out. I just still handwrite sticky notes and then put them on my screen. Jesus, I'm just old school. I guess just old school. Jesus is, going to be checking out the University of Houston. He's a Wes Fritz. He's a, I guess, Wes and Willie Fritz kind of guy from Tulane. Kind of a linebacker. We'll see what he projects at when he shows up to Houston, when he shows up to Houston. But he's definitely a great fit for an Austin Armstrong's defense, that like jack hybrid box position. He, for reference, is a linebacker that wears number 99. He's kind of a pass rushing kind of guy. And for what it's worth, he missed 2024 with an ACL injury. And I understand that can be scary for some in getting a depth piece like that. But in 2023, he played over 750 snaps, 600 of them were in the box. He is a high-ranking player on PFF in things like tackling, pressures, interior defense, run defense. He's really good at all of those kinds of things. He's listed as a linebacker in the transfer portal, and I don't know if that's a position switch as much as just kind of a catch-all position for a guy with his kind of skills. He's aggressive, he's physical, he's violent in the best kinds of ways on a football field. And again, he's a Fritz guy. He was recruited to Tulane by Fritz and company. Did not make the initial transition over, but did heal his ACL while he was spending his time at Tulane. Coverage, admittedly, is a weak point for him if you're looking for like poking holes in Jesus Macho coming to Houston. I do think, though, that that's something you get better at as you get older. Typically, high school recruits are better at being, pass rusher, getting after the pass than they are in coverage, especially the linebacker-ish kind of spots, because frankly, coverage is a lot harder in college, and he's gotten better at that every year in his Pro Football Focus grades. When you watch video on him, you got to pay attention to when it was, because 2023 is the most recent, and that's kind of a little bit different defense than I think he's best fit for. They put him more on the line pass rushing in a lot of situations, and I think he's kind of more of a true hybrid in terms of size. I like the potential add, though, of Jesus Macho, so I'm going to keep a close eye on this one. Got some feelers out for how his potential visit that may or may not happen will or will not go. I think the big deal here, though, is this is a vet that understands Fritz's culture, understands what he wants in a locker room, understands what Fritz is trying to build here. I think it's really, really important for a coach turning around a program like Willie Fritz is. And it's a great depth piece, frankly, for a position that gets banged up throughout a year. I think it's really, look at Michael Batten a year ago and think like, oh, those linebackers just play forever. And it's one of the most physically demanding positions in all sports. It's easy to see how that would be a guy that you want, a position that you want some insurance behind, even if it's a guy that tore his ACL a year ago, right? You're thinking that that's healed and recovering with less reps. You're less likely to put stress on that in a way that tears. He's not the only guy Houston's looking at with any seriousness right now in the transfer portal. I'm told Tanner Koziol, the tight end, 6'7" tight end out of Ball State, that's back in the transfer portal, is a guy that Houston's really, really talking to. So we'll see how those talks go. 6'7" tight end, great pass catching tight end. Tight ends are going to be important. What Slade Nagle wants to do, you see a lot of tight ends on the field at once based on what he did when he was the OC at Tulane. So I think that you'll see him on the field a lot if he comes to Houston, plays tight end. I think it's going to be important and enticing to him as well. As you look at modern football, tight ends are, some offenses really use them. Some offenses really don't. When you're looking at recruiting a guy like Koziol, I feel like the offenses that really, really use him are going to be more intriguing, obviously. He had over 120 targets last year, had just 4 drops. He's really great in the flat, check down, under 15-yard kind of area. And as we look at what Conner Weigman's going to be asked to do at Houston, and frankly, with what he had to do while he played hurt at A&M last year, and frankly, what you're going to anticipate him doing this year as he's, ultimately learning a new offense and all of that, I think it's worth pointing out that that's a great release valve of sorts to have. At 6'7", it's a big, big target too, which is going to be important. He lined up kind of both on the line and in the slot, so you can kind of change what you're lining up in with him on the field without changing personnel and kind of tipping your hand to the defense in that kind of way. Impressive tape and highlight kind of stuff. It's hard to find full game tape of Ball State out there, but his highlight tapes are great. And so I think I'm excited about that one as well. Houston's not landed either kid yet, Jesus Machado or Tanner Koziol, but I do think that they're high on both, and both have reciprocated interest back to Houston. So don't be surprised if after a good football weekend for the Houston Cougars, if those two potential game-changing kind of guys, both culturally and on the field, end up, posting the graphic, so to speak. Again, they have big-time offers from other big-time Power 4 programs. I don't think that Houston's alone in seeing the talent that these two guys have, but I do think they have individual reasons why they would fit particularly well with what Houston's doing. And I think that that's an important thing to keep an eye on as you're watching the spring game this weekend and kind of getting an eye on what Houston's going to look like this fall. Now, full disclosure, we're about to talk about the spring game in segments 2 and 3. I'll be watching the spring game on Saturday. We are also at family for Easter and doing that whole deal. So reporting on it and that kind of stuff is going to be different. We'll see if we get something out by Monday or not, with Easter being Sunday and us recording, typically into the night on these kinds of things. We'll see how Monday looks, but I do want to tell you what I'm looking for, what I'll be looking for getting ready for that spring game in just one second. But before we get too far, I did mention that today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Now, I don't know if you knew that Amazon Fire TV can also be an Xbox. It can turn any TV into an entertainment hub with Fire Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play just like that. Dive into 100 premium titles from EA Sports College Football 2025 or 2026 when it comes out. Call of Duty, Black Ops, Avowed, anything you're playing on Xbox. You can also stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, all on your Fire TV. Endless entertainment with Fire TV 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and much, much more. I'm interested as we end basketball season, head into the spring and summer, what you're looking at on your Amazon Fire TV as far as TV shows go these days. Tell us in the comments down below what you got going for that, because always looking for new things. Severance, pretty strong. Pretty strong. Head to Amazon Fire TV, Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass unlimited subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire Stick TV 4K, Fire TV 4-Stick Max, and Fire TV Cube. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs here. Talking about what I'm looking for when I watch at the spring game this weekend. And this segment, I want to talk about the offense. The segment afterwards, I want to talk about the defense and what kinds of things I'm keeping an eye on as I'm looking for what this Houston Cougar football team will look different or what about it will look different next year. Now, full disclosure, I'll say this on the defense side too. I think this team wins 8 games next year. I like looking at the schedule, the talent. I'm looking at them with a little bit more critical eye because year 2 of the rebuild, I'm expecting pretty sizable increase in wins. And that's in large part because of the takeover quarterback with Conner Weigman. Folks that Locked On laugh with me, there's a Locked On Big 12 folks, because I'm really high on Conner Weigman actually. And I think they're all like, oh, this Parker guy is Conner Weigman. Da, da, da. I'm like, no, I think this is a great fit. I think he fits into what Slade Nagle wants to do. What I'm watching for him, though, on the offense this weekend is how that shoulder looks like. You know, he talked about and talked with CBS earlier in the offseason about the injury that he had. He played with it as long as he could, ultimately until he was kind of, just couldn't do what he needed to be able to do at A&M with it. I want to see how many deep balls does Conner Weigman throw. He's got deep threats. Boogie Johnson is the connection to look for there. They know each other from high school. Boogie is a burner, and Conner Weigman has really good accuracy. And so we'll kind of see how those things turn out with the healthy shoulder, theoretically, and the kind of footwork and speed that Boogie is working with. I think you're going to really like Harvey Broussard as well. Devin Williams will be impactful. This wide receiver room is set up for a healthy Conner Weigman to have some success. So I want to be paying attention to that arm and what kinds of routes they've got him throwing, because the deeper, the better at this point. I also think it's worth pointing out that you kind of hope to see just a little bit more oomph on his passes. When he played hurt at A&M last year, some of those passes had a little bit less oomph than you might have needed. And so how those things look is going to be really, really important. On offense, I'm also looking at what the offensive line providing him time looks like. I will say part of my assumption of him throwing more deep ball this year than he used to do last year is that he's going to have more time. And that's because when we look at the offensive line, you see a whole lot of new names. One name I'm really interested in looking at is Mackenzie Agnello. Agnello is a Swiss Army knife. He played center, he played tackle, he played guard. He did everything New Mexico needed him to do. And so if he's at center, does that mean Demetrius Pancake Hunter is playing something else? If he's at tackle, what does it mean that Ndukwe is playing? I'm looking at where Agnello is lined up on the offensive line because A, I can guarantee it's going to be a collision because that dude will hit you. And B, it'll tell you a lot about how the rest of the offensive line is going to look as well. He can play, I think, any of the spots at the Power 4 level. I don't mean to say that he has to play center or guard. I imagine, though, you're going to see him at center and Pancake at guard, Demetrius Pancake Hunter at guard, or vice versa. I don't know which you'll see more of, but I think that'll be kind of the combination you see. Out of the tackle, Dalton Merriman and Alvin Ibaselli are kind of rehabilitating their careers. They both started a lot of games in the Big 12 at Texas Tech and Baylor, respectively. So where are they going to fit into this offense? Who plays right? Who plays left? Bluntly, does Ndukwe kind of step up to the competition and kind of make this a 3-horse race? I think he might. He individually, if you actually watch the video from last year, had a decent year at right tackle. And as much crap as people want to give the offensive line from last year, and with another year of development, another year in the weight room, another year of speed and agility training, I think that there's a chance he's pretty strong at that right tackle. So how those three guys ultimately work together. And then I mentioned that I think Pancake and Aguilar are going to play two of the center and guard. That other guard spot, Caden Bowie, Jason Brooks, I kind of think it's going to be a really good competition between those two right now. Brooks is really good in 2023 at Oklahoma State. And so we'll see how those kinds of things go. I'm also going to watch the second offense, though, and see, anyone we just listed on the offense that hadn't played will be with the twos, but also Zeon Chriss is going to be important to this team. And as I talk about this offense, I want to talk about that from a couple angles. One, props to Zeon for seeing this through and saying, hey, I came to Houston to play. I'm going to try and play here, right? And seeing the spring through is hard to do for a quarterback. We're seeing this all this crap unfolding at Tennessee. Zeon's like, no. I'm going to try and play. I'm going to compete for this spot. Props to Zeon. The other thing is that, look, I like Conner Weigman a lot. I open up the segment with that. I hope he's upright and healthy all year long. I really do. I think there's a better chance of it happening this year than would have been a year ago. However, he's had an injury, it feels like, every year. I know it's been every year at college. And Zeon's probably going to have to play. Now, you're going to have to play him or OELA or McMickle or Austin Carlisle or somebody at some point when Conner Weigman needs a blow or needs to get healthy or whatever. You just hope that doesn't take that long. You want your starting quarterback healthy, obviously, but it feels like an inevitability that he'll miss sometime, a drive to get checked out in the 10th or, a second quarter before he gets checked out at halftime or something like that. And so you're just hoping that you got a guy that can keep the ship steady for however long that is. I think Zeon also offers a dynamic ability to run that Conner Weigman, frankly, doesn't really. And I think that, much like I said a year ago, you at least have to give him a package where it's like the wild Zeon because he can run and throw and makes the defense account for it. And frankly, it's not hard to install. And then once you've installed it, the defense has to spend their week practicing for it. I think it's a cheap way to get a real advantage in a game for an offense that has a guy like him on the roster. And I think it's also like a way to utilize all of your weapons. Zeon Chriss is a weapon. And I think that they need to use him as such. He doesn't ever look like he's moving that fast, but then it's like, holy crap, is he going to the dust? He is that fast, right? Speaking of being that fast, this is not like a critical analyst kind of, I'm going to be watching this on Saturday to watch this any at the third or whatever. I really like watching Re'Shaun Sanford run the football. I really, really like watching him run the football. He is shifty. He is strong. He runs angry. He runs fast. He hits the hole. I really like watching him play football, and I really think Ray's going to be really good for this program, and I really can't wait to see him run the football some on Saturday. He's fun. I said on the other day on Twitter, I think he's the kind of guy that could win some hardware at Houston. I don't know what hardware it is. I don't know if it's a Big 12 offense of this or a running back of that or all conference or whatever. I think he's really good. He's the kind of guy, and I mean this in the most positive of ways, that Houston is really lucky is not 6'2". If Re'Shaun Sanford were the exact same level of talent at 6'2", that dude's a 5-star Alabama man. And I don't mean that to say like he's not a potential pro football player. We've seen what Slade Nagle has done with small running backs when he was at Tulane. Houston saw it up close and personal, right? There's no reason that he can't go pro from the spot he's at. But he's the kind of talented that if he were taller, he'd be legitimately a guy with a bunch of commas in his check and NIL right now and do that kind of stuff. And instead, he's going to be at Houston and he's going to showcase what he can do and make a bunch of commas playing on Sundays. I like watching the guy play football a lot. And so I'm really excited about what he's going to do. And so that's not like in-depth analytics or anything, but what we're talking about, we're going to look forward to on Saturday. That's what I'm looking forward to on Saturday. The defense is going to be the guy trying to stop Re'Shaun Sanford and the rest of this as well. And they're really good. And they probably going to run a more complicated system. I'll talk more about them and what I'm going to be watching for them out of them in a second. But first, Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Cougs here, talking about Houston Cougars spring football and the spring football game this weekend. And I want to talk about the defense and what I'm looking for. And I think the first thing that's going to jump out to me is there is no Keith Cooper. And with no Keith Cooper, no Gravedigger, t-shirt, great, by the way. What does this Houston football program front look like without that guy, for lack of a better phrase? And by that guy, I mean the guy that a year ago was forcing a double every play. Keith Cooper was forcing double teams left and right all over the field. Wherever he lined up, the offense had to account for him. And that makes everyone's job a little bit, most would say easier. It certainly makes it different, right? And it really, I think, makes the defense a very, differently called defense, knowing that's how teams are going to react to Keith Cooper. Keith Cooper's hoping to play on Sundays, and I'm hoping for the best for him and all that. I think he's that kind of good, if you ask me about it. But what does this defense look like without him is the problem for this Sunday. Now, I think Carlos Allen and Big X, both down the inside, is going to open up a lot of things. I think LaTrevion McCutcheon, Big Trev, I think he's going to, frankly, have a pretty good year at that hybrid spot. I know we opened up talking about Jesus coming in, also playing that some. I think Trev is built for that position. I think we're going to see a good weekend out of him as well. I think he's a name, LaTrevion McCutcheon, that you need to know if you don't know about it yet going into the season. That dude's body is developed. He's grown up a lot in his couple years on campus. So keep an eye on him, because I think that he's going to be a guy that you need to know and need to pay attention to. On the defense side of the ball, I think that the other thing will be see how that rotation comes up front. Clay LaFau, the guy from Washington State, the transfer in, the Utah native. What spot does he play in? He's played some 3 technique. He's played some end. He's played some inside. What does Houston see him as? And frankly, how they get on the field could be important. He's pretty talented. But again, he's a 3 technique, and Houston, assuming that Austin Armstrong is running what he did previously, doesn't really use the 3 technique quite the same way. For those that are less familiar with interior line play, that's like a guy lines up over the guard. Think like Aaron Donald kind of stuff. That's the best version of it. Obviously, not every 3 technique is Aaron Donald, but so we'll see what that looks like for him. In a similar vein, I'm looking to see what Corey Platt looks like. Corey Platt is a projected future NFL player before tearing his knee a second time last year. So we'll see what he looks like post-surgeries and post-recovery. Sounded like throughout the offseason that all recovery has been going great. He was full contact practice. He's been doing great things. So we'll see what he looks like and how he's moving. Corey Platt, if he can play and is healthy, is an all Big 12 kind of linebacker. And so what Houston does to feature him, I don't know, they'll show a whole lot of it in spring practice. They've been together for a few months. But he's going to make plays that make you go, whoa, very, very quickly. Plays an important position, obviously, the Mike linebacker spot. I don't know if they'll play Mike for this team or where they'll play him. Maybe they'll start projecting him into spots he might play in more in the NFL. But I think that he's going to be an important part of what Houston's doing up front. So you got to keep an eye on what he's doing, because he's going to be kind of the beneficiary of a lot of those block eaters up front that Houston's got on the defensive line. So where does Corey fit in? What the rest of the linebacking core looks like around him will be important as well. Speaking of playing around him, this is the part that I'm looking for that I bet they don't show a lot of on Saturday. Full disclosure. I think Houston's got the best secondary in at least the Big 12. There, I said it. And I think Austin Armstrong is a guy that enjoys running really complex defenses because it throws off the offense. The dude's really smart in terms of X's and O's. So he started breaking down the kinds of things he was doing at Florida and at Southern Miss. I know that people talk about what he did and didn't get to call while he's at Florida, whatever. He enjoys a complex defense. He's got a veteran secondary with a lot of talent. I think a couple NFL guys on it. I really do. And Halsey is like an old throwback kind of safety. Frankly, this was 2004. I think Halsey's a clear-cut pro. So we'll see what kind of position he is now in the modern game. I think he's a pro. I think Jeremiah Wilson's a pro. I bet Latrell McCutcheon gets a spot, right? Gets certainly a look, right? With a guy like Keontae Scott playing the nickel spot, like what is Austin Armstrong with all of this talent on the back half of the defense go out with? And frankly, I'm looking for it this Saturday, but he's not dumb. He's probably not going to throw out the most complicated stuff they're going to do this Saturday. He's probably not going to show all his cards in his hand this Saturday. But I think you'll start to see some very simple early stages of what could be an electric defense. Again, Houston was an underrated defense nationally last year. They were top 30 and 40 in a lot. I mean, top 40 in like every category. They just couldn't get off the field, and the offense didn't support them and stuff like that. And so while Weigman and Nagle and those guys are fixing that, this defense might have gotten better. I know you lost your coordinator and Sheelwood. That's all been said before. But Armstrong inherited a pretty strong group of guys. And it could be another year with this being the strength of this team. Willie Fritz is a defensive guy. Slade Nagle likes running the ball. Like, this could be another defensive-led team with a better offense. And I am excited about, again, this is nerding out a little bit, but like disguising coverages and shifting to 2/3 coverages and stuff like that. Like, those things will be hard for other college quarterbacks, even highly paid NIL quarterbacks at your other Big 12 schools. Those are going to be hard for them to pick up and mess with. And I'm excited about Houston getting to utilize their secondary and take advantage of that. Now, I'll be watching all this on Saturday. I mentioned last segment, Saturday is the day between Good Friday and Easter, and we're with family, so I'll be watching it. I might tweet something about it or whatever. I'm also probably not supposed to be on my phone that much that day because we're with family or whatever, right? But I'll be watching on Saturday, and then getting an episode out for Monday morning is going to be challenging. Easter Sunday is a bigger deal, and so we'll be doing those kinds of things, and we record these shows at night. Night could be full of traveling back home and all that, so we may just put out 2 on Tuesday. We'll see how those kinds of things go. It also could be just the kind of thing that's just such an awesome weekend for Houston Cougar football. We just can't avoid talking about it, even if it's at 1 a.m. Who knows, right? Well, who knows what's going on and what those things will look like. So keep an eye on social media. You can follow me at Painsworth512 on most every platform. I'm at Painsworth Sports on Instagram. Be talking and updating about what we're doing, how we're covering these things in their latest forms in the coming days. And also talk about Houston Cougar basketball and what the latest news there is, or whatever the latest thing on all things Houston Cougars are, because Locked On Cougars is the primary Locked On podcast. Now, your team, Conner Weigman's team, Slade Nagle's team, Washington Armstrong's team, AJ Halsey's team, all of these great Houston Cougars teams each and every day. It's nice to be talking about football once again. Go Cougs.